In my mind, the Ramones are one of the most quintessential groups of all time. I put them up there with the Stones, Queen, David Bowie, the Beach Boys, fuck, even the Beatles. That's how highly I think of them and their influence. And what an influence. You'd be hard-pressed to find any alternative-leaning group who don't hold at least a tiny little bit of reverence for this band. And that includes bands from the grunge, metal, noise, industrial, you name it genres. On top of that, you can basically thank them for the entire punk rock genre as a whole. They are to punk what Black Sabbath is to metal. You could argue that they weren't the first because of bands like the MC5, the Stooges, and Death, but it's undeniable that they paved the way for the genre and introduced it to the masses. It's because of them we have Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Metallica, the Foo Fighters, Red Hot Chili Peppers, fuck, even bands like Dream Theater. And that's bands from genres outside of punk rock. If we include punk rock, then we'll basically be including every punk band that's ever been formed ever. And that's not even taking into account bands that have been dubbed Ramones Core. And the music has been covered by the likes of U2, Tom Waits, fuck, even Kiss. I mean, they're such an iconic band, they have such a mythos behind them, the rivalry between Joey and Johnny is legendary in its own right. These guys hated each other's guts, yet still managed to function as a band for over 20 years. So think about that the next time you bitch about that one coworker you really hate. From Johnny's chainsaw of a right arm, down picking like it's going out of style, with Dee Dee and CJ right along with him punishing their basses, but more important than that, in Dee Dee's case at least, was his songwriting. Most of the Ramones' greatest hits, most of the band's songs to begin with, were written by him. The guy's a masterclass songwriter. Tommy, Richie, and Marky always keeping the beats simple, yet laser precise at all times, all of them with hands made of steel. Joey's crooning, soulful voice that gave the band its heart. But make no mistake, he could bark when necessary, and he could growl like nobody's business. The guy was a much more versatile vocalist than a lot of people give him credit for. On top of that, the band had the look, they had the energetic shows that practically invented moshing, the legendary logo that secures them along with the Misfits, Dead Kennedys, and Motorhead, a spot in every hipster's closet who wants to pretend he has good taste in music. But none of that would matter if it wasn't for the music. I don't think I know of any other discography that is as famous as it was undersold. The band only has 2 gold albums, and one of them was a compilation record for fuck's sake. The band rarely played big crowds unless it was a festival setting, and besides that, they mostly just played clubs. Yet as soon as members of this band started to croak, everyone was a fan. Where were these people when the band could actually use their support? Man, life's not fair. But regardless, today we're doing a top 10 Ramones songs video. And since I did Green Day not too long ago, Ramones seems like the next natural step. Though keep in mind that this is far from an objective list. This is merely just my opinion. So I look forward to all the comments asking me why the Hey Ho, Let's Go song is not included. But in all seriousness, leave your own top 10 Ramones song list into the comments below. I love reading that kind of stuff, it really just puts a big smile on my face. Anyway, on to number 10. Number 10, I Just Wanna Have Something to Do.
I just wanna have something to do tonight.
Unlike many other Ramones cuts, this song is not a barn burner of any sort. It's very mid-tempo, but unlike a lot of other mid-tempo jams, it's not boring or plodding. There's a lot of energy behind every chord strummed and every snare hit. It's as powerful as it is infectious. But then again, that's something you could say about most Ramones songs, so it's really nothing new. It even has one of very few guitar leads on a Ramones album, and you know damn well that it was not played by Johnny. I love the lyrics of yearning for someone, without it being necessarily a love song. It could be about anyone, like a friend, a family member, a boyfriend or girlfriend, and keeping it vague like that is genius so the listener can make up in their own mind what the song means to them. And it's got a feeling of restlessness and ambivalence, which is exactly what a teenager wants to hear, which is why the Ramones has such an impact on young people even all these years later. This song is the sound of rebellion.
I don't wanna be with anybody else. I just want to be with you. I just wanna have something to do tonight.
And it's such a great way to open Road to Ruin, which many claim to be the greatest album this band ever did. I'm not sure if I agree, but I could totally see why someone would say that. It's classic as fuck. Number 9, She Talks to Rainbows.
She don't talk to me.
Definitely the standout from the final Ramones album, the appropriately titled Adios Amigos. The song is almost un-Ramones in a way because it isn't the high-energy power chordy punk that we're all used to. It's dour, depressing, in a minor key, and there's almost an eerie quality to it. I mean, it could almost be a Smiths song. It really drones as it goes on with the open guitar chords that have all these notes ringing out, and the bass and drums really being understated throughout the entire thing, so that Joey's voice and lyrics can really shine. In fact, you could almost say that the song is almost psychedelic in its composition. You could almost say the vocals are its own instruments in the song. The inflection is perfect, and it's actually really emotional. I would not be surprised if Joey based these lyrics on an experience he had at some point in his life, because it sounds very genuine and personal. It seems to be about a girl who has built up a wall around herself, and she doesn't let anyone in. She may laugh along with the others, but she has issues that she won't let anyone help her with. It's songs like this that I would recommend to people who don't like the Ramones, to show them that this band is way more than just Blitzkrieg Bop or I Wanna Be Sedated. Number 8, the KKK Took My Baby Away.
Took my baby away, they took her away from me.
Definitely one of the band's biggest songs, and for good reason. It's a certified bop. The main riff carries the song with its kind of herky-jerky timing, and it absolutely decimates. And funnily enough, the riff was actually inspired by a Cheap Trick song.
She went away.
And the song's subject matter has, let's just say, being contentious throughout the history of the band. The band's longtime manager, Monty Melnick, has theorized that this song is about Joey's Reaganite of a bandmate stealing his at the time girlfriend Linda away from him. And the KKK comparison kind of makes sense because Johnny was a hardcore Republican, and he used to apparently tease Joey for being Jewish. But both Joey's brother, Mickey Lay, and Mark Ramona both dismissed this rumor, saying that Joey wrote the song prior to Linda and Johnny getting together.
He was in an institution for a while, so he knew a black girl who was next to him, you know, and they got along very well.
Yeah.
They liked each other a lot. So a few days later, she was gone, and it flipped him out, it freaked him out because he became really close and good friends with her. So he cleverly, I mean, nothing's funny about the KKK. But he used that in that song.
But even then, Mickey and Marky's stories both kind of clash with each other, so make of it as you will. But regardless of how you slice it, it's still a great song that defines the band. Number 7, Do You Remember Rock and Roll Radio? Not too many songs capture such a snapshot of its time like this song. It marks the Ramones moving from the 70s to the 80s, and it sounds like it. Yet funnily enough, the song's actually about nostalgia of a different time. The song yearns for the days of old school rock and roll with people like Jerry Lee Lewis, John Lennon, and bands like T-Rex. And to most people paying attention, it should make sense that the Ramones are paying tribute to those bands of old, because those are the artists that heavily influenced their sound. I mean, that and cocaine, but still. And the song even has more of the old school rock and roll sound because Phil Spector, the man behind the famous Wall of Sound, is in the producer's chair for this album. And as perfect as it sounds on paper, the album End of the Century is usually called the end of the band's classic period, and I get that because it's nowhere near as solid as the first four, but it definitely has its share of classic gems, and Do You Remember Rock and Roll Radio definitely fits that description. Number 6, Sheena is a Punk Rocker.
A punk rocker, Sheena is a punk rocker now.
And now we finally have a track from probably my favorite Ramones album, Rocket to Russia. And what an album it is, with classic songs for days. But my favorite track is definitely Sheena's a Punk Rocker. And it continues the trend of songs like Judy is a Punk and Susie is a Headbanger, being a song that's kind of biographical and tells a story. This time it's about a chick who's had enough of her town and is on her way out of Dodge to greener pastures.
But she just couldn't stay. She had to break away. When you feel has it all. Oh yeah, yo.
And the song is an earworm of example, and it sounds uber vintage, even more so than most Ramones songs. It's basically the band's take on surf rock. It also actually has a pretty weird rhythm to it, and it kind of sounds like an early Beach Boys song. All it's missing is some luscious backing vocals to be a creation of Brian Wilson and company, and not Joey, Johnny, Dee Dee, and Tommy. Number 5, Strength to Endure.
I'm straight.
Now we have the only song on the list where lead vocals are not handled by Joey, but instead CJ Ramone, the at the time new bassist that replaced Dee Dee a few years prior. And he may not have been Dee Dee, but he didn't try to be. He had his own look, his own style, and he was more than a worthy replacement. In fact, I met him last year during his Australian tour, and he was nice as hell. In fact, he even signed my copy of Adios Amigos. And seeing those old classic Ramones songs being played live is almost a religious experience. It's that powerful. And that night when he played Strength to Endure, the crowd definitely lit up. And it's a song that a lot of people, including myself, really identify with CJ, even though it was actually written by Dee Dee. And CJ has such a cool voice that is soaked in nothing but pure attitude that provides a good contrast against Joey's voice, especially when CJ would sing backing vocals or when he would sing Dee Dee's parts live. And this song for sure shut up the old guard who only want to see Dee Dee hold down the bottom end of the band. Number 4, Pet Sematary. To stand out from the ridiculously lopsided Brain Drain, an album that has a scatter of different songs across the spectrum of quality, but Pet Sematary is most definitely the cream of the crop. It was the theme for the Stephen King film of the same name, and I'm actually one of 3.5 people who actually enjoy that movie, but I think we can all agree that the song is way better than the film. It was written when the band visited Stephen King's home, who was a massive Ramones fan by the by, and Dee Dee grabbed a copy of his book Pet Sematary, went down the basement, and came up with the lyrics to the song an hour later. Say what you want about Dee Dee, but he was nothing if not efficient. And it's actually quite out of the box for a Ramones song. The song relies less on pounding power chords and more on arpeggiated chords. And as you can imagine, Johnny had a bit of a rough time with it, but still, he managed and it came out great. The song structure was also modified by producers Daniel Ray and Jean Bouvier to give it more of a mainstream sound for it to appeal to a broader audience. And it worked. Well, kind of. It was by no means a smash hit, but it did get to the top 5 on the alternative rock charts, and it did give the band a much needed popularity boost to kickstart the 90s era of the Ramones strongly. Number 3, Commando. I don't think the Ramones ever topped themselves in the sense of pure blistering riffage that this song provides. It's searing and it'll take your ears clean off if you're not paying attention. And unlike most other Ramones songs that are catchy as the plague because of great pop hooks, this song, though catchy as hell, is mainly due to the bellowing chant that repeats the rules of being a commando. The song was written by both Dee Dee and Johnny. The song is more identified with Johnny nowadays, with his own autobiography being named after the song. But the song is actually more connected to Dee Dee than anything, since it's about his experience growing up in Germany with his alcoholic, abusive Vietnam veteran of a dad. He would routinely beat Dee Dee and his sister, which was the reason him, his sister, and his mother ended up moving to New York when Dee Dee was 15 to escape the family's patriarch. And that's the decision that led Dee Dee on the path to becoming the punk rock icon he ended up being later in life. Number 2, 53rd and 3rd. The absolute fuzz, power, and aggression of the song is something else. It absolutely destroys all within its path. This Dee Dee Pen song is about 53rd and 3rd, otherwise known as The Loop. It was a pretty well-known spot within New York's gay nightlife for male prostitutes to, And Mr. Douglas Colvin was definitely one to oblige in these extracurricular activities in order to scrounge up the money for the crack, smack, and whack that he would end up losing his life to decades later. In fact, when you look at Dee Dee on the cover of the classic debut Ramones LP, you'll see that his leather jacket does not fit him at all, because he had, let's say, better things to spend his money on. And the song is kind of tongue-in-cheek until Dee Dee himself takes the mic for the third and final verse, and the song takes a frightening and grim turn. Before we get to number 1, let's go through some honorable mentions. The Crusher, Havana Affair, Mama's Boy, I Believe in Miracles, Danny Says, Don't Come Close, and Rockaway Beach. Number 1, Poison Heart.
Out of this world, 'cause everybody has a poison heart.
Now you might be thinking to yourself, really? This song? Out of all the songs you could have picked, you picked this song? And yeah, you're damn right I did. This song is a tour de force in songwriting. It has instrumentation that is punchy and impactful, hooks that grab you and never let you go, and lyrics that encourage introspection and retrospection. It's haunting, dark, but most importantly stays with you long after you hear it. It was written by Dee Dee after he left the band, but he ended up giving the song to them as a thank you for them bailing him out of jail. The song's about being burned by people you at one point trusted. People you maybe considered friends, family, lovers, or anything in between. I think we've all known or made friends with someone who ended up having a poison heart, and we maybe didn't realize it until much later on in life. And it's probably true for Dee Dee too. The guy definitely had a hard knock life. He was abused as a child, his family had to move around a lot so it was hard for him to make friends. His music, as amazing as it was never as popular as it deserved to be, and he suffered from addiction for the better part of his life. You could call him the Brian Wilson of not just the band, but of punk rock in general. An absolute tortured genius who walked so bands like Green Day, The Offspring, and Blink-182 could run. So remember everybody, even though most of the people in this band have long since passed on, the music will always be with us. As corny as that sounds. So long live Johnny, Dee Dee, Tommy, and Joey. And Godspeed to Richie, CJ, Marky, and even Elvis. And until next time, Ramones forever.